The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of the Shelby County Courthouse in Memphis, Tennessee, on September 12, 1973, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors, as lawyers, clerks, and citizens filed into Courtroom 7 for what was to be a routine civil hearing. Among them walked Elvis Presley, dressed conservatively in a dark blue suit and tie. His famous hair styled more modestly than usual as he made his way to the witness stand, where he had been subpoenaed to testify in a case involving his former manager who had allegedly embezzled funds meant for charitable donations. The case had garnered significant media attention, not because of its legal complexities, but because it involved the king of rock and roll being forced to testify about financial matters that most people assumed he left entirely to others. Elvis had been dreading this day for weeks, not because he had anything to hide, but because he knew his celebrity would overshadow the serious nature of the proceedings. He had seen how judges and juries reacted to famous people in courtrooms, sometimes with starstruck awe, sometimes with cynical skepticism, but rarely with the straightforward respect that justice demanded. As he took his seat in the gallery, waiting to be called as a witness, Elvis could feel the curious stares of everyone in the room, from court reporters to spectators who had come hoping to catch a glimpse of the famous entertainer in an unguarded moment. He had prepared extensively for his testimony, reviewing documents and consulting with attorneys, determined to present himself as the serious businessman and philanthropist he had become, rather than the pop culture icon most people expected to see. The case itself was heartbreaking in its implications. Robert "Bobby" Carmichael, who had served as Elvis's business manager for 3 years, was accused of diverting over $200,000 in charitable funds that Elvis had designated for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, and several Memphis area programs for underprivileged youth. The alleged embezzlement had been discovered during a routine audit, and the revelations had shattered Elvis's trust, while potentially jeopardizing the very charitable causes he had worked so hard to support. What made the situation even more painful was that Elvis had considered Carmichael a friend. Someone he had trusted not just with his money, but with his reputation and his commitment to helping others. Now he would have to testify about the intimate details of his charitable giving, his business practices, and his personal involvement in causes that he preferred to support quietly, away from the glare of publicity. If this incredible courtroom drama is capturing your attention, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us continue sharing these amazing true stories about legendary moments that reveal the real character behind the fame. Thank you for being part of our community. Presiding over the case was Judge Harrison Blackwell, a stern 62-year-old jurist, who had built his reputation on maintaining absolute order in his courtroom and showing no favoritism to anyone, regardless of their social status or celebrity. Judge Blackwell was known throughout the Memphis legal community as a no-nonsense traditionalist who had little patience for what he considered the frivolous excesses of modern popular culture. He had made his disdain for rock and roll music clear in previous cases involving musicians, often making pointed comments about the moral decay represented by contemporary entertainment. This morning, as he reviewed the case files one final time before court convened, Judge Blackwell could barely conceal his irritation at having to deal with what he viewed as another example of celebrity self-indulgence and financial irresponsibility. When court was called to session, and Elvis was summoned to the witness stand, Judge Blackwell's expression immediately shifted to one of barely concealed amusement mixed with condescension. As Elvis approached the witness stand, walking with the quiet dignity that those who knew him personally had always admired, Judge Blackwell made a show of adjusting his glasses and looking the famous witness up and down with obvious skepticism. So, Judge Blackwell began before Elvis had even been sworn in, his voice carrying a tone of bemused superiority. "We have the famous Elvis Presley gracing our humble courtroom today. Tell me, Mr. Presley, do you actually understand the nature of the proceedings here? Or did your lawyers simply tell you to show up and look serious?" The courtroom erupted in uncomfortable murmurs at the judge's unprofessional tone. But Elvis remained composed. His hands folded calmly as he waited to be properly sworn in. "Your Honor," he replied respectfully, I understand that these proceedings concern the alleged misappropriation of charitable funds, and I'm here to provide truthful testimony about my knowledge of the relevant financial transactions and business relationships." Judge Blackwell chuckled audibly, a sound that carried clearly through the courtroom's excellent acoustics. "Well, someone's been practicing their vocabulary. Tell me, Mr. Presley, do you actually manage your own financial affairs? Or do you simply sign whatever papers your handlers put in front of you while you're busy gyrating on stage?" Elvis's attorney, David Morrison, immediately stood to object. "Your Honor, this line of questioning is inappropriate and prejudicial. My client is here as a cooperating witness, not as a defendant," but Judge Blackwell waved off the objection with a dismissive gesture. "Overruled. I think it's perfectly reasonable to establish this witness's competency to testify about complex financial matters. After all, we're not talking about song lyrics here, are we?" The judge's comments drew nervous laughter from some members of the gallery, but Elvis noticed that many people in the courtroom, including several lawyers and court personnel, looked uncomfortable with the obvious bias being displayed from the bench. Elvis himself remained calm, having long ago learned to maintain his composure in the face of prejudice and dismissal from people who judged him based on stereotypes rather than facts. "Your Honor," Elvis said quietly, "I understand your concerns about my qualifications to testify. Perhaps it would help if I provided some background about my involvement in the financial and business decisions relevant to this case." Judge Blackwell leaned back in his chair with a theatrical expression of patience. "Oh, by all means, Mr. Presley, please enlighten us about your vast business acumen. I'm sure we're all dying to hear about Earth's sophisticated financial strategies. What do they call you? A rock and roll star." What happened next would be talked about in Memphis legal circles for decades. Instead of responding defensively or allowing himself to be provoked by the judge's obvious contempt, Elvis began to speak in a calm, measured voice filled with a knowledge and authority that caught everyone in the courtroom completely off guard. "Your Honor, I appreciate the chance to clarify my background and qualifications. Since 1955, I have personally reviewed and approved every significant business contract, endorsement, and financial investment made in my name. I have studied tax law extensively because I believe it's my responsibility to understand how my earnings are managed and how my tax obligations support public services. I can discuss the specific details of incorporation procedures, intellectual property licensing, international royalty structures, and investment portfolio management because these are not abstract concepts to me. They are the daily realities of running a multi-million-dollar business enterprise." The courtroom had fallen completely silent. Even Judge Blackwell's smug expression was beginning to fade, as he realized that this was not the uneducated entertainer he had expected to intimidate. Elvis continued. His voice gained strength and authority with each word. "In regard to the charitable contributions that are the subject of this case, I don't simply sign checks and forget about them. I have personally visited every facility and program that receives significant funding from my foundation. I have reviewed their budgets, met with their administrators, and in many cases, I have worked directly with the children and families they serve. When I committed $50,000 annually to Children's Research Hospital, I didn't do so based on a recommendation from a business manager. I did so after spending time with Dr. Danny Thomas, reviewing the hospital's research protocols, and understanding exactly how those funds would be used to save children's lives." The transformation in the courtroom was palpable. Lawyers who had been checking their phones were now listening intently. Court reporters were typing rapidly to capture every word. Even the bailiffs had stopped their routine monitoring to focus on Elvis's testimony. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Elvis said, his tone becoming more forceful while remaining respectful, "I want to address your apparent assumption that my profession somehow disqualifies me from understanding serious matters. I have employed over 200 people at various times, from musicians and technicians, to security personnel, and administrative staff. I have negotiated contracts with major corporations, television networks and international promoters. I have managed tax obligations across multiple states and foreign countries. I have established charitable foundations, created scholarship programs, and administered loans. Programs for young musicians who couldn't afford instruments or training. Judge Blackwell was no longer smiling. The casual contempt had been replaced by something approaching embarrassment, as he began to realize the magnitude of his misjudgment. But Elvis wasn't finished. Your Honor. I grew up in poverty in Tupelo, Mississippi, and I learned very early that if you don't understand money, how to earn it, how to protect it, and how to use it responsibly, you'll end up right back where you started. I may entertain people for a living, but I am also a businessman, a taxpayer, and a citizen who takes his responsibilities seriously. The charitable contributions in question represent money that I earned through my own work, and I have a detailed understanding of how every dollar was supposed to be used. The silence in the courtroom was now complete. Even the prosecutors and defense attorneys were staring at Elvis with newfound respect and attention. This was clearly not the testimony they had expected from someone they had likely dismissed as just another celebrity witness. Elvis then did something that shocked everyone even more than his articulate defense of his qualifications. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila folder that he had been carrying since entering the courtroom. Your Honor. If I may, I'd like to present evidence that I believe will be relevant to this case. Evidence that Mr. Carmichael's attorneys may not be aware it exists. Morrison quickly stood to talk with his client, but Elvis nodded to him reassuringly. I have discussed this with my attorney, Your Honor. These are copies of personal records that I kept separately from my business manager's files. Judge Blackwell, now clearly off balance, granted permission for Elvis to present his evidence. What Elvis revealed next sent shock waves through the courtroom and transformed the entire case. Your Honor, these are copies of canceled checks, bank deposit slips, and correspondence that document a pattern of finance irregularities that go far beyond what has been alleged in the case. I have been conducting my own investigation into Mr. Carmichael's activities for the past 6 months. Ever since I noticed discrepancies in the quarterly reports from my charitable foundation. Elvis opened the folder and began presenting documents with the methodical precision of an auditor. These records show that Mr. Carmichael was not only diverting funds intended for charity, but also skimming money from concert revenues, merchandise sales, and recording royalties. The total amount of missing funds appears closer to $800,000. Not the $200,000 mentioned in the indictment. The prosecuting attorney, Janet Williams, requested permission to examine the documents, and after a brief recess, she confirmed that Elvis's evidence appeared both authentic and devastating to the defense's case. But Elvis had an even bigger surprise in store. Your Honor, I also want to present evidence that Mr. Carmichael was not acting alone. These financial records suggest a conspiracy, involving at least 3 other individuals who facilitated the embezzlement and received portions of the stolen funds. The defense attorney, clearly rattled by these unexpected revelations, objected that this evidence had not been disclosed during discovery. Elvis calmly responded that he had only recently completed his private investigation and had immediately turned the information over to authorities. Your Honor, Elvis continued, I want to make something clear to this court and everyone present. I did not conduct this investigation because I am some amateur detective who watches too much television. I conducted it because I have a fiduciary responsibility to the charitable organizations and individuals who depend on my foundation's support. When someone steals from my charitable fund, they are not stealing from me. They are stealing from sick children, struggling families, and community programs that provide hope to people who have very little. The emotional weight of Elvis's words was evident throughout the courtroom. Several spectators were visibly moved, and even Judge Blackwell appeared to be reconsidering his initial assumptions about the witness. Elvis's testimony continued for another 2 hours, during which he presented detailed financial analyses, timeline correlations, and documentary evidence that demonstrated not only his thorough understanding of his business affairs but also his genuine commitment to the charitable causes that had been victimized by Carmichael's crimes. As the day progressed, Word spread throughout the courthouse and into the media about the extraordinary testimony being given in courtroom 7. By afternoon, the gallery was packed with lawyers, journalists, and court personnel who had come to witness what was described as one of the most impressive witness performances in recent Memphis history. Legal history. When Elvis finally stepped down from the witness stand, the courtroom remained silent for several seconds before Judge Blackwell spoke. His tone was completely different from the condescending amusement he had displayed that morning. "Mr. Presley," the judge said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I made assumptions about your capabilities and qualifications based on prejudices that have no place in a court of law. Your testimony has been thorough, professional, and invaluable to these proceedings. I want to thank you for your cooperation and for the obvious care you have taken in preparing for today." Elvis nodded graciously. "Thank you, Your Honor. I understand that people sometimes make assumptions about others based on their profession or public image. I just hope that today's testimony will be helpful in ensuring that justice is served and that the charitable organizations affected by this case can continue their important work." The impact of Elvis's testimony extended far beyond the immediate case. Based on the evidence he provided, prosecutors were able to file additional charges against Carmichael and 3 co-conspirators, ultimately recovering nearly all the stolen funds. The case became a landmark example of how celebrity witnesses could contribute meaningfully to legal proceedings when they approached their responsibilities with seriousness and preparation. Judge Blackwell, for his part, underwent a profound change in perspective that affected his approach to all future cases. He became known throughout the legal community for his fairness and for his refusal to prejudge witnesses based on their backgrounds or professions. Years later, when asked about the most important lesson of his judicial career, he would always cite Elvis Presley's testimony as a reminder that wisdom and competence can come from unexpected sources. The story of Elvis's courtroom performance spread quickly through Memphis and beyond, not because of its entertainment value, but because it demonstrated something important about prejudice and the danger of underestimating people based on stereotypes. Legal scholars wrote about the case as an example of how assumptions about social class, education, and background could cloud judicial judgment and potentially compromise the pursuit of justice. But for Elvis himself, the experience reinforced his belief in the importance of being prepared and taking his responsibilities seriously. Seriously, regardless of the setting. In interviews afterward, he often spoke about the case as a reminder that celebrity brought not just privileges, but also obligations, including the obligation to approach serious matters with the gravity they deserved. The charitable organizations that had been victimized by Carmichael not only recovered their stolen funds, but also received additional support from Elvis, who established new oversight procedures to prevent similar problems in the future. Children's Research Hospital, in particular, benefited from Elvis's increased involvement and oversight, leading to expanded programs and research initiatives that saved countless lives over the years that followed. The courthouse staff still talks about that September day, when the king of rock and roll showed them that true nobility comes not from titles or social position, but from the willingness to stand up for what's right and to approach every responsibility with dignity and competence. A plaque now hangs in the courthouse lobby, commemorating not Elvis's fame, but his service to the cause of justice and his demonstration that every citizen, regardless of their profession, has the potential to contribute meaningfully to the legal system when they take their civic duties seriously. Bobby Carmichael was ultimately sentenced to 7 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution plus damages. His co-conspirators received lesser sentences, but were also required to make financial restitution. More importantly, the case led to new regulations governing the oversight of charitable foundations and the accountability of business managers who handle celebrity finances. Before his retirement, Judge Blackwell established the Elvis Presley Witness Preparation Program, which helped train individuals from all backgrounds to participate effectively in legal proceedings. The program emphasized that the justice system worked best when all participants, witnesses, jurors, and officers of the court approached their roles with preparation, respect, and a commitment to truth rather than personal prejudice. Elvis's performance in that Memphis courtroom became a lasting reminder that intelligence, integrity, and civic responsibility are not determined by someone's profession or public image, but by their character and their willingness to do what's right when it matters most. The king of rock and roll had shown that he was also a citizen who understood that justice requires active participation from everyone, regardless of their fame or social status. The transformation of Judge Blackwell from skeptical critic to respectful advocate demonstrated that even long-held prejudices could be overcome when confronted with undeniable evidence of competence and character. Years later, court personnel would remember not the spectacle of a celebrity in their courtroom, but the profound lesson about the danger of assumptions and the power of authentic preparation to overcome bias and serve the cause of justice. In the end, Elvis Presley's day in court became much more than just a legal proceeding. It became a masterclass in civic responsibility, a demonstration of the importance of preparation and professionalism, and a powerful reminder that true respect must be earned through actions rather than demanded because of status. The laughter that had greeted Elvis's arrival that morning was replaced by a silence born of respect, admiration, and the recognition that they had witnessed something truly extraordinary. A moment when prejudice was overcome by truth, and when justice was served not despite someone's celebrity, but because of their character. This incredible story of dignity, preparation, and overcoming prejudice shows us that respect must be earned through our actions, not demanded because of our status. If you were moved by Elvis's legendary courtroom performance, and the lessons it teaches about character and civic responsibility, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Share this story with someone who needs to hear about the importance of preparation, integrity, and standing up for what's right. What did you think of Judge Blackwell's transformation? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to hit that notification bell so you never miss our inspiring content.